Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. So thought we'd do a Marvel versus DC book review, and these are both high recommends. I've been thinking a lot about some of my friends recently, and I've got maybe like a couple different theses or thoughts fighting each other. One is kind of my conversations with Matt Krotz, creator of Kyrie, who has kind of busted Marvel and DC's balls a little bit because he feels like they've maybe made the American comics market too superhero centric when there are other genres you can explore. He also doesn't like events and multiple continuities and multiple universes. And the funny thing is, I think that almost every comic book fan I've talked to, even if they do like events or they like, I don't know, this universe or that universe, I don't think many people like read, maybe as a universal thing, people don't like reading a comic book and being confused. And I'm also maybe thinking about what can you do in the digital age, where one thing Marvel and DC do that I love is they have these dollar comics, right? Because that's a great price point for a comic. The issues themselves are often excellent. Something I used to do is I'd buy the comic and there'd be a little digital code in it, so I could redeem the digital code and give away the physical comic. Because if I didn't really love it, if I didn't absolutely love it, then I figured, what the heck, I can just go look at the digital later. And digital has like a love or hate relationship, but I have like a sneaking feeling that maybe there's a way, like if Marvel and DC were run by competent people and they cared about saving the local comic shop business community, maybe there was a way that digital sales could be used to push more people towards local comic book shops. Maybe something like, Pokemon, where you'd have to go to Toys R Us to get Mew or whatever the special Pokemon was. Like, you'll get 10 digital comic books if you go buy a regular comic book on this day or something. I don't know. But basically, I really like the dollar genre thing. And I don't know. So I like these both for two different reasons. Let's get into the actual review. So, The Brave and the Bold, number 197, Batman and Catwoman. This was printed in a Batman Greatest Stories Ever Told book that was just a collection of several stories throughout his career. So I've read this story probably like 500, 6,000 times, somewhere in that range. And this is a beyond a perfect comic. I feel like Brave and the Bold 197 is a comic everybody should read, even if they're not a big Batman guy, because it's such an excellent story in its own right. It's the closest I think Batman can ever get to a happy ending to his fairy tale story, and there are lots of great ideas about Batman in this, which force you to kind of contrast this Batman with other versions of Batman. And the thing is, you don't have to be a big Batman nerd to get it. Like, I'm adding all of this because I know different versions of Batman. This is just a great story. So observation number one, he has a gun, yeah, because this is Golden Age Batman, but he's also a really good guy. And the animated series, for example, the animated series made him a little bit more of a pessimist, a little bit more dour and somber. And Frank Miller, of course, had this idea that Batman can never really escape being Batman. Even if he tries to go in retirement in his 50s or 60s, he's forced out of retirement by the darkness and the nastiness of the world. He can never fully defeat the darkness of and nastiness of the world. Therefore, he can never stop being Batman. And so Frank Miller's idea of a happy ending for Batman is he gets to keep being Batman. As a rugged individualist, he never stops fighting. This is a completely different take where Batman is afraid of being alone, and being Batman itself is stopping him from fulfilling his life. Like, Batman has become so big a part of his life that it's pushed out Bruce Wayne. He doesn't like Bruce Wayne anymore. Everyone he loves only knows him as Batman. So just like the animated series, he's afraid of being alone. But whereas in the animated series, he's a dark character. He's an arrogant character who pushes everyone away and becomes alone in his old age, except for Terry McGinnis. Because the Golden Age Batman is just a great guy, he finally finds some hope at the end of his story. I just remember reading this and thinking, wow, he had friends, he cared about his friends, he cared about justice. They all feel cool because Batman admires them, and they admire him, he admires them. It's just like best friends all the way through. But then it wasn't just like, this is like 1983, so this is let's see, Alan Brennert as the writer, Joe Stanton and George Freeman as the artists, Joe Costanza as the letterer, and Len Wein again as the editor. So these guys were looking back at the Bill Finger, Bob Kane era of the characters. There's even a nice little Easter egg for Bill Finger in this that I thought was just sweet. And they're recognizing that the Golden Age character is this great character, and as they're paying homage to it, there are so many great ideas about Batman as a character in this, like the idea that Jim Gordon sees some of himself in Batman, that if Jim Gordon were younger and hadn't like missed his opportunity, he could have been a Batman. So he's trying as a police commissioner to do everything he can to help Batman. That's great. Batman as an adventurer. Batman in the slick blues and grays. Black doesn't say anything. Black says, "Oh, I'm a ninja." Blue and gray says, "I'm freaking cool," and I just feel like dressing in blue and gray. It's mysterious. It's unusual. It's unique. He has this great internal monologue, you know, kind of like he's tired, he's old, he sees the end of his life approaching. And unlike Frank Miller's Batman, who's obsessive and can never stop being Batman, this guy just wants to hang up his cape at some point. But can he ever do that until his mission is complete? What does mission accomplished look like for Batman? A couple really neat pages. So this is great eye direction. Naturally, you want to go from this panel to this panel, right? But you got to read this first. So what do? They have the Scarecrow shoot these things down here. You follow these as arrows to this, and they put this inside the box so you don't accidentally skip over it. Now, if you were about to go this way, you bonk into his elbow right here, and you come back to this, right? So this is great. Then you follow it down here and read that normally. That's some great eye direction. A little later, there's another page where it's not quite as effective. So what you're supposed to do is follow her cape down here to the bright yellow arrow, which points you down here. But that didn't work for me because I ended up like hopping out here because words are really strong drawn. So I don't know, maybe like if there was like a visual block here or another visual arrow, so you don't just have the cape, but you have another point coming down, that have worked. But I just love that kind of stuff. Like the art, even though this didn't work, it's still very carefully considered, like, let's use the cape to point us down here. So Batman believes people are disappearing around him, right? And I think there are one or two episodes of the animated series that feel like they took inspiration from this general plot line. And he meets Catwoman. So I think one of the reasons they're obviously publishing this is there's the Catwoman Batman wedding thing that Tom King has been trying to do for 50 issues. I've had people tell me it's really good. I need something like deep within myself to hunker down for a 50 issue or 100 issue series. But what's really sweet about this is it is so dang human. It's Batman, but he's afraid of being alone. He busts Catwoman out, and she eventually admits that she has this parallel fear to him. And look, they even reference how, they don't even show it, but they reference how she's shocked at the number of scars he has. Ouch, there's a tragedy, there's a burden on this character. And this is the old-fashioned version of the character, like old-timey hero version of the character. Hopping forward a little bit, Selina talks about her past. This is a great compositional page too. All right. Why did she lie about having amnesia as an excuse for why she became Catwoman? Because I was trapped. I wasn't Selina Kyle anymore. I was the Catwoman. Because I was 30 years old and I didn't want to die without love, without children. I wanted to start over again. So this is really resonant because it's at about 30 years old that you start having to like take account of how you spent your youth and what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And her moral problem, I don't want to be alone, is exactly like his moral problem, I don't want to be alone. Is this ever going to end? Or am I just going to keep doing this forever? It feels like they're eventually going to hang up their capes and have an end to the story. I even love how compositionally this is also clear, like that's not touching that, it's not touching that or that, it's very easily, clearly read. You come down here, look, there's a shadow on her shoulder coming down to be Batman's epic shadow for this part of the picture, a big circle around here with a red shape to pop that forward and visually distinguish it from everything else as they're having their emotional hug moment and they realize they're falling in love. And Batman is growing more and more delusional because he's afraid that the Scarecrow has stolen everyone he loves from him. He's not listening to reason. He's ignoring other possibilities. He's even considered the possibility that's an illusion, and he's ignored it because the illusion just feels too real. And for him to break out of that, he has to take off his Batman mask. He has to pull down his defenses and trust her enough where love isn't just a feeling. It's this mutual act of trust where you have to trust the other person enough to risk your the rest of your life on them, right? So he takes off his mask. She takes off her mask. Happy ending, marriage. Really, the only thing I don't like about this, spoiler, 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 is they say that Selena Kyle died young, which to me kind of feels like a sour note at the end of a really happy. Like they couldn't give him a happily ever after. They felt like they had to give him an element of tragedy along with the happily ever after. And they don't tell you what happened to her. I don't know, cancer. I don't know. But even with that, this is one of the best interpretations of the Batman character ever. Almost every great idea about Batman ever is contained within just this one comic. The art, good grief. So everyone should own Brave and the Bold 197. It's a great standalone comic. It was intended as a self-contained sort of closing note to the golden age version of the character, just as we were sort of starting to enter into this modern age where all the other universes were coming in to complicate things. So X-Men, Quanon, I think it's a reprint of X-Men 17. I have some weird distant childhood memory of this. I don't know if I own the original or, like, for me, it was X-Men Essentials is how I got my X-Men knowledge. So I just reviewed these Sonic comics where I joked that I shouldn't have like continuity problems reading Sonic the Hedgehog. It should all be stupid simple. So X-Men 17, it has a couple little things where they mention the weird stuff that have happened in comics, and if you don't know what they're talking about, that would be weird. It does an okay job at telling a self-contained little story where they kind of muse about all the grief and trauma they've been through trying to save the world and how that doesn't go away just because they finished the fight and they saved the world last time. Now they've got to like deal with the BS they've gone through with their family and with themselves. Scott's kind of getting over Jean Grey's loss, her death by falling in love with Psylocke. So the weird things, I'll be specific. So the weird thing specifically is Pitor's little sister. At one point in the comics, she got magically transformed into a teenager, right? Because they felt like, oh, we need more waifus on the team. And then someone had the bright idea that, that's kind of sad. Let's give her childhood back. So they retransformed her back into a little kid to give her childhood back. I always feel really sad when children lose their childhood because that feels like they got robbed of something like irreplaceable. And like if you're gonna do that plot point, make the point that is one of the most tragic things that could possibly happen to you, right? So that just gets referenced out of the blue in the comic. And if you had no idea, like if you gave this to a kid without any other X-Men knowledge, that would be the weird thing. So that's what kind of like Matt Krotz would make fun of as comics. It can be really hard to approach these comics. And maybe one of the things about them was if you were alive at the time these were first coming out, this was so fun because it was happening now, and you could run to the comic shop and you could try to pick up all the issues that they referenced where they fought this guy or that guy. And X-Men was a hip and happening thing in the night. Okay, kind of one of the things I want to pull this together from this is I'm always making the argument you should read more than one type of thing. So I tell Western comics geeks a lot, you've got to read manga, right? Why are you not reading manga? Why are you torturing yourself with SJW comics from Marvel and DC when there's manga you can go read, right? Like, do I have to tell you why you shouldn't whip yourself on the back in the closet or something? And then sort of my pitch to weebs is a little bit different. If you love manga, I think that the Western comics tradition has a lot of what you love about, like, hey, Zoomers, the Western comics tradition has a lot of great stuff in it. And a lot of the great manga artists clearly look at Western comics, but it's a little bit harder to get into. Like, I can imagine you'd read this comic and kind of bounce off it because you're not sure what these events being referenced are. So maybe what I think needs to happen in the digital age is, this is a fun comic. I enjoyed it. I filled in the blank gaps from reading X-Men. We need something that's the digital equivalent of going to the library and reading all the crappy Marvel Essentials, black and white books. I would suggest putting out reams and reams and reams of digital comics for free, or making them as free bonuses for buying a comic book. If you take your kid and buy a X-Men comic book, you get 10 years of X-Men digital comics for free. And I know that's like sacrificing a profit margin, but I feel like we need like a ramp to get kids hooked onto the stories and the characters initially, so that later when they're older, they come back and they buy all the paraphernalia and T-shirts and figurines and the Treasury editions, right? Like little kids can't afford the X-Men Treasury editions. Give them things like the $1 comic. That's a great start, but Marvel and DC, this is just a good standalone book, so that actually doesn't apply to this at all. Marvel needs to make it easier for people to, especially young people, to see how this excellent comic fits into the piece of a larger puzzle. And I think digital might be the answer to that. We've got Andy Kubert as the penciler, Mark Pennington as the inker, and Fabian Nicieza. Some great purple prose writing to this, some great emotional beats. It just sets up the next thing. So this is an example where if you just went and picked this up, you get the start of a great story, and you have to go get the Treasury edition, I guess, to get the rest of it. But I have lots of fond memories of this era. It just looks so dope. They tell you the names of the characters. Boy, a lot of great emotional beats from this era. Fantastic. All right, so I don't know. If you're a weeb, maybe that wasn't the best pitch on Western comics. That was a little bit more of a critique of what I think Marvel and DC are doing wrong. But the dollar comics is one of the things they're doing right. Okay, maybe this would help. Just go buy every dollar comic, read all of them, and when you see something you like, go find more by that artist and that writer, and you will likely get more hits like that. If you're rich, buy the Treasury editions. I think the digital comics are too overpriced, especially when piracy exists. Like, I understand charging $1 for a digital comic. I don't understand charging $5 for a digital comic. But I promise you that the more you read of Western comics, especially if you get a feel for what kind of like don't hop into X-Men and then hop out of X-Men and hop into Spider-Man. Pick one franchise like X-Men, stick in that, and read enough of it so that you can fill in some of the gaps on this era. And what I think you'll find is these are really well-written short stories for people who know what's going on. They fill in, oh wow, look at that. There, okay. What am I doing? That's the argument. That's the argument for why you should get this book. #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys, and I'll catch y'all later. So I was about to put these in my donation pile. This one's so good, I want to actually go try to buy the original if I can and have that in my collection. But I was about to donate these, and I had like a brain lightning storm. So one of the problems is we've got like this great digital age. You can put anything out there for anyone on the planet to read it, but it's also competing with the physical edition, where brick and mortar shops are dying because digital is functionally replacing them, which is kind of like this tragic, pro-con of the whole situation. And there's piracy, right? So anytime you offer like a digital book for $5, the sad reality is someone can Google it and get it for free illegally, which I don't endorse, but you kind of have to take that into consideration, right? Saying pay $1 for this to read it legally is a lot of an easier sell than saying pay $5 for this to read it legally. So I was thinking, what the heck can you do about this where digital gives you this opportunity? So here's my bright idea. All right, what if Marvel Comics basically said, like, all the kids are stuck at home in quarantine, they're bored, right? And the internet keeps dying. What if Marvel said, we will send you for free every comic we made during this week of 1990, right? So you get to read, like, especially if you're a kid. For that week, you get to read every great Marvel comic book that came out in August 12th, 1990, and then in a week it expires, and the next one comes out. Now, I guess the problem of that is, well, I don't get it forever. No, because it's free, right? So that's the catch to it. Is yes, you get to read everything for free and get excited for next week, but it'll be gone in a week, so you better read it, right? Don't miss it. Which actually is a great idea, because the reason I think it's a great idea is then it gives it an element of time, where if you just buy it and you have it forever, well, you can just store it in your folder of stuff, right? And you forget you even have it. Whereas if you have a week to read it, then you say, okay, I'm getting it for free, but I only have it for a week, right? So I better take advantage of it. And then you get hyped for the next week, which means you start to experience it in real time. I don't know if it's practical. I don't know how this gets implemented, but I feel like that would be maybe like a great compromise between trying to profit from the material and being afraid that if you offer it, like, what I'm looking for is some kind of way that the digital revolution can be used to on-ramp kids into the Marvel Universe while still making it profitable for them. And I don't know, maybe like if you, it would just be fun to re-experience it, like re-experience what it was like to be alive August 1990 digitally, right? And then maybe you could connect that with some like promo code where you go to the local comic book shop and you'll get you can get buy one get one free for a Marvel comic. I don't know what it is, but everything's collapsing. The brick and mortar shops may be dying. Marvel and DC need to do something proactive to keep the brick and mortar thing alive if they want that for a future generation. Manga is a respected and very vibrant art form in Japan. Kids love stories with pictures in them of people fighting each other. There has to be a way to use the digital revolution to support local comic book shops, not harm them. All right, so what do you think of that idea? What ideas do you have? Tweet at oh man, I forgot. CB Cebulski. Tweet my ingenious idea at CB Cebulski and tell him number one Marmaduke fan sent you. All right, for real this time. Love you guys. Catch you later.